The pharmaceutical company that developed this drug for PKU was actually really very instrumental in the forming of the National PKU Alliance. And so up until a few years ago, there were about 18 different state and regional organizations across the country that provided local support, local cooking classes, local educational classes through the various metabolic clinics. That was really the driving force in terms of providing support and education to families and adults. And so when the pharmaceutical company was looking at, the development of this drug and was getting close to being completed with its various clinical studies through the FDA, the company actually brought together all of the state and regional organizations. And, they had the resources in order to do that. And so for the first time you had, a number of organizations made up of parents and grandparents and adults living with PKU that were really able to talk one-on-one, face-to-face with one another. So the National PKU Alliance was actually started and founded in 2008. And it was really, I think, the leadership and those early resources from the pharmaceutical company that really helped us become a very viable and important critical organization for PKU families and adults across the country. And so for the first time, we really have a national voice, at the policymaker level. We're invited to the table. And I think that has done incredible things to, let people know on the federal level just what the needs and challenges are for people living with PKU, as well as for adhering to the treatment. I would say that, there are 7,000 different rare diseases out there, and, some of these diseases may only have, a few hundred people that have been affected. And my advice to a family member or to a parent of a child with a rare disease is, to get involved at the national level with national organizations like Genetic Alliance or the National Organization for Rare Disorders. And, those types of larger national umbrellas can really help and assist, different people in the rare disease community to be able to create, patient organizations, patient research foundations. When you look at the history of rare diseases in this country, it's really the coming together of parents and adults and families and family members that have really driven the research into these diseases to lead to treatment options and to lead to cures. And I think that a lot of times the organizations like the National PKU Alliance can help to kind of, bridge that relationship and leverage those relationships to get, the academic researchers and the pharmaceutical companies together to look at, how do you deal with this disease? What is the biochemistry of it? What is the natural history? And what do we need to do to move forward? I think that, nonprofit organizations like ours and others really hold the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation up as really the gold standard. And they really understand very intimately and very, very well that it's so important to have those close relationships, with the companies that are taking the risk, doing the research, and trying to get new drugs, into clinical studies that will hopefully one day be approved and, and help improve the lives of that disease. We also need to make sure that, there are people, there are structures, and there are processes in place to assist pharmaceutical companies as they look at taking academic research and developing drugs and going through, the various, stages and entities within the Food and Drug Administration, to try to get a drug on the market. I mean, it's an incredible risk. It's an incredible investment for these companies to take, the research and the work of an academic investigator, apply to the FDA for clinical studies. Drugs have to go through, 3 phases of studies before, they can possibly, be approved by the FDA for use in the public. 80% of them, don't make it past, phase 1, of a clinical trial. And so I think that, policymakers, families, as well as researchers, need to partner with pharmaceutical companies, always obviously have, safety and efficacy at the forefront, but, to make sure that, we're removing some of the barriers that are still there and looking at how to make a drug, available, from bench to bedside. And, I think that there's been some remarkable progress with that. I think that people within the FDA and the NIH and others, are working much closer and much better, not only with patient communities, but also with pharmaceutical companies. And we just hope, that will continue. Because really, I think in the end point, the pharmaceutical companies really have the same goal, I think, as the patient community. And that is, to find better treatment options as well as to find a cure for these diseases.